Will the Huskers be able to compete against another top 5 opponent? Hi, I'm Aaron Muller, and this is episode 17 of the Cobsmacked Podcast. This is a Nebraska Football podcast where we cover the Husker season and team news as it progresses throughout the year. Every video episode is uploaded to YouTube, and the audio versions can be found on Apple, Google, and Spotify. If you enjoy the content, consider leaving a like and sharing. Let people know about it. Helps me reach more ears and helps me spread the podcast. Looking at this week's preview, we have the Week 10 matchup against Ohio State University Buckeyes. Kickoff is at 11 a.m. in Lincoln. It should air on Fox. Weather-wise, it's supposed to be chilly. It's supposed to be like mid-50s. Could get up to 60 towards the end of the game, but light wind, cloudy. It's going to be a November game. So Big Ten East opponent, Ohio State University, is 5-0 in conference play this year. They are in the top dogs. They're always kind of up there. They're always the standard for the Big Ten, but they are led by Ryan Day, the head coach. This is his third season. He is 23-2. Very impressive. You mean you're not going to complain about that kind of record, but there was little to no drop off when he took over after Urban Meyer. I know some people were concerned about that. Hasn't been an issue since he took over. He hasn't really switched up the schemes a whole lot, so that helped. But Ohio State's known for bringing in talent, and talent certainly helps regardless what scheme you're running. So they're still a powerhouse. They're still the standard for the Big Ten. They're still the bar that everybody has to strive to achieve to get up to. Their offense is a power spread offense. They're averaging 47.3 points per game this year. On top of that, they're also averaging 550 yards per game. Nebraska's allowing 20.3 points per game, so they're going to be able to score on this. I don't feel like that's going to be the issue that we're going to run into. They're second in the country in yards per play at 8.23 yards per play. They've never finished, I think the stat was they've never finished lower than seventh in the country on offense under Ryan Day, so he's never going to decrease. Offense is what he's good at there. There's talent in every position on the offensive side of the ball. They're led by their freshman quarterback, C.J. Stroud. He has thrown for 2,200 yards this season, 23 touchdowns, and only 3 interceptions. So I know he struggled early in the year, especially up through that Oregon game. But since then, they've kind of hit their stride. Since then, he's kind of gotten into a rhythm. He's found his targets. He's getting more comfortable. I think I read somewhere, too, that coming into this year, Ohio State did not have a single quarterback that had thrown a collegiate throw. That's kind of crazy to me, considering like who they've had the last few years, that they didn't have anybody behind them that was getting snaps. But I guess that's just the way it goes. So we had Justin Fields there last year, but I think he transferred in. And the year before that, I think they had another transfer. So maybe that kind of explains it. But they haven't had a guy throw a pass before this year, and now C.J. Stroud is really finding his rhythm, and it doesn't seem to be an issue. Anyway, he's a very pass-focused quarterback, though. I don't see him take off very often, but that's helped because he has a well-rounded running back room. 5 different running backs have touched the ball this year. They have totaled 1,500 yards and 18 touchdowns. Their top running back, freshman Travion Henderson, has 845 yards, 12 touchdowns. On top of that, he has 175 yards receiving on 3 reception touchdowns. So they're utilizing him in the run game and the pass game, but he's over. He's going to go over 1,000 yards, probably hit 1,500 yards by the end of the season. The way he's running, the way he's catching the ball and running with it. So the running backs allow the quarterback to just focus on the pass game, and that's working wonders for them. It helps to have wide receivers that are also talented. The wide receiver room is filled with NFL level talent anyway. So they have senior wide receiver Chris Olave. He has 562 yards on the season with 9 touchdowns. He's probably their most successful, their most talented. You expect to see him on Sundays. Defenses really focus on him, so that frees up the other targets, such as junior wide receiver Garrett Wilson. He has 687 yards on the season with 6 touchdowns. He leads the team in yards. Next to him, you have sophomore wide receiver Jackson Smith Njigba. I'm going to butcher the hell out of that name, but he has 648 yards and 3 touchdowns on the year. He's quickly growing into a high caliber receiver. He's only a sophomore. With C.J. Stroud being a freshman, they're going to have a lot of plays together going forward. So the team as a whole on offense seems to be really young. This seems to be kind of like a refresh year for them, and they're still in the conversation for the college football playoff. They're 5th in the country right now. So it doesn't seem to be an issue. I can only imagine this is going to get more ironed out as they get older. Flipping over the defensive side of things, they run a 4-2-5, but it has multiple different looks. They bring up guys, they push guys back, but they almost always have that 2-back safety. Really focus like 6 guys up on the line to focus on the run game. Everybody else is man-to-man because they have the talent to do that. They're only allowing 19.3 points per game. Nebraska is averaging 29.9 points per game on offense, so it's going to be a struggle there to score on them. I think we are going to be able to score on them just because if you look at their schedule, they really haven't played somebody. I bring this up every week. They haven't played somebody with as much offensive potential as Nebraska has, but we haven't been capitalizing it on our end either. So we should be able to score on them, but I don't think we're going to catch up to that 47.3 average on their offensive side of the ball. Their defense, though, has solidified a little bit since their opening loss to Oregon. They did play Minnesota the week before Oregon, but I kind of consider Oregon their opening game because that was the game that they lost and nobody saw that coming. But they still have areas that they could improve on. They, just like their offense, they have talent everywhere, though, so that really helps solidify things up quicker when you have guys that can do it on their own anyway. They're still 6th in the country in sacks per game, and they have 28 total sacks on the year. Their defensive line accounts for 23.5 of those sacks, so they're not having to blitz linebackers and corners and safeties in. They're getting their home with their line. And like I said, like that's something that we needed to work on this year, was to not have to pull people in so that they could drop back into coverage and help on the coverage side of things. But when you have a defensive line that's getting 23.5 sacks through, 8 games on their side, that's very impressive. Led by senior defensive tackle Haskell Garrett, he leads the team in sacks at 4.5 sacks, and he has 2 forced fumbles he has 2 fumble recoveries at 2, with one of those being a touchdown. The whole team has 14 turnovers as well. They have 10 interceptions with 4 fumble recoveries. 6 defensive touchdowns is first in the country. They not only get the turnovers, but they're capitalizing on them and making them points. They have 8 guys with interceptions. There's not a single guy you're going to have to watch out for and not try to throw it to him. They have guys all over the field that are going to snag that ball out of the air. They have sophomore safety Ronnie Hickman, who leads the team in tackles as well, but he has 2 interceptions on the year. They have another cornerback, I believe, that has 2 interceptions on the year as well, but Ronnie Hickman has 2 interceptions, with one of them being a pick 6. He's constantly in that ball hawk mode as a safety, so he's going to be one you watch out for, but there's going to be guys all over the field. I'm really kind of concerned that if Adrian has another night like he had last week, where he's just kind of tossing the ball up like he did, it's going to be a lot worse than just 4 interceptions. Flipping over the special teams, they have a senior kicker, Noah Ruggles. So this guy is very impressive. He has kicked 11 field goals this year, and he's made 11 field goals this year, and he's made all 47-point afters as well. He's 100% on the year. He has not missed anything, and they're not all chip shots. He's made some from like 40 plus like that. He has incredible consistency. Us as Nebraska, we would die for that. That is just, it's super incredible. It's super nice to see a kicker anywhere in the country having success this year, because there's been so many that struggle. Punting side of things, they have a freshman Aussie punter. I like to bring up that they're Australian because there's tons of them. Jesse Mirko has 19 punts and a 40-yard average. So at 19 punts through 8 games, they're not punting it very often, which means they're scoring a lot. Getting into the keys of the game. So I'm going to preface this with, if we had done this game right after the Oklahoma-Michigan State-Michigan game, my thoughts might have been a little more optimistic on Nebraska's side, but not so much anymore. Unless Ohio State completely craps the bed, I think that we're just going to be overwhelmed with the amount of talent that they have. The reason I'm changing it now is because I've seen the struggle that we've had the last 2 weeks against less talented teams, and when we go up against Ohio State that's going to have a ton of talent, it's just going to be an issue, I think, for us. So I think the keys here are more to keep the game close. If we can keep the game close, then there's always that, that puncher's chance that we knock one out of there. But getting into the key one, we're going to need to win the turnover battle, which it won't stop their offense, but the turnovers will help flip momentum. It'll help our offense get short yards. It'll help our defense get off the field more often. Turnovers is something we've struggled with, though, and Ohio State is really good at not giving up the ball. So the number one key is going to be the hardest thing to do, but if we can accomplish that, then that'll get the ball moving. That kind of slides into key number 2, which is pressure on the quarterback. So playing off the first one, if we can get back to Stroud, he is a young guy. Cam Taylor-Britt made note of that this week. He kept calling him, he's a young guy. If we can get back to him, he'll be rattled. That's true. He's a freshman. He hadn't thrown a college pass before this year. He's really found a stride lately, but he also, I don't think, has been dealing with a lot of pressure. He is not a very mobile quarterback, such like Adrian Martinez pulls magic out of his pocket and just disappears and doesn't take a sack. This guy, I don't know if he has that capability. So if you can get back there, rattle him, make him see pressure like he hasn't seen this season yet, then you should be able to force him to throw passes that he's not ready to throw, or throw them in coverage that he doesn't quite see. He doesn't have time to decipher all of the coverages there. So if you can rattle him, make him make bad throws, then that'll really throw the turnovers up in the air. So number 3, we need to sustain offensive drives. So the defensive side has both of the first 2 keys. The offensive side needs to be able to sustain drives to help the defense out as well, whether that's through the air or preferably on the ground. Martinez needs to make good decisions first and foremost. He doesn't need to force anything here. He just needs to make smart plays. We don't, if there's nothing there, he just needs to throw it away. That's something that he struggled with all of his career, is if there's nothing there, he tries to make something happen because he's been forced to kind of do that all his career. If there's nothing there, he needs to get the first down himself, which that's a lot of pressure on him anyway. But if it's not there, he just needs to throw it away. He needs to get rid of it. They need to keep the defense off the field for as much as possible because, like I said, with all the talent that they're going to have on their offensive side of things, we need to give our defense a break. We don't have as much depth as they do. We don't have as much depth of talent as they do. So we need to keep them off the field, get them rested for every series that they do have to go out. We need to focus on first downs instead of getting game winners. I know that we like to pass on first down and kind of do trick plays rather than just going for the straightforward get the first down. We try to go for these large chunk plays, which it's nice to mix those in there to keep the defense on its toes. But if you're going 3 and out more often than you're scoring touchdowns, then that's an issue, especially for the defense. Time of possession has killed us in the last 2 games. So if we can keep the ball for at least half the amount of time, I know the last 2 games, Minnesota and Purdue had both had the ball for almost 40 minutes. That you've seen how that impacted the performance on the field. So if we can limit the time of possession by keeping the offensive drives alive, then that'll help them limit the amount of series that they have to score on us, but that'll also help us to keep the defense off the field. Getting to the final prediction. So the spread right now is Ohio State is favored by 15. The over and under is 64.5. I have my score set to 45-31, which is still very optimistic compared to every other spread I'm seeing right now. There's only 1 or 2 guys that are picking Nebraska to cover, and it's very close. It's it was at 14.5, so people have taken that 14.5 spread on Nebraska side, but now that it's gone back up to 15, most of these guys are jumping on Ohio State. There's 23 predictions out there, and only 2 of them are picking Nebraska to cover, and just barely. So mine would be covering technically at 14 points, but as I mentioned, I don't like our chances here. It's always going to be hard to go up against Ohio State. It's the hardest game, if not the hardest game, on a Big Ten schedule. Whenever anybody sees Ohio State on the schedule, yes, it's nice to go up against the best of the best to see how you measure up, but it's going to be the hardest game on the schedule. Maybe I'd be more optimistic after our big games this year, but we've been playing up and down to our competition, and we just haven't been consistent. And even when we do play up, we're not capitalizing, we're not winning those games. So after seeing a lack of execution and juice by the team in the last 2 games, especially coming off the bye week against Purdue, I was very disheartened by the effort that was put on the field. I know the leaders haven't given up. You could see that from JoJo Domann during the post game against Purdue. He was very emotionally still involved and attached to this program. But I wonder if the schedule has taken a toll physically and mentally on the team at this point. Somebody had pulled up a stat that all of our games except for 2 this season, are going to be against ranked opponents, and most of those are going to come from top 15, top 10 opponents. So at some point or another, we're going to play 5 top 5 teams that were ranked somewhere in the season. They were ranked top 5. We're going to play 5 of them this season. So that's kind of ridiculous if you look at it that way. But like I said, I don't think the leaders are giving up, but it's just the schedule has been so brutal against this team that it's hard for them to come back after they're already on the verge of missing another bowl season. I still think we'll be able to score on offense, as I mentioned earlier, especially if we're able to get the turnovers like I mentioned in the keys. But I feel like that's where the game's kind of going to go in Ohio State's favor, because once you get into the depth, once you get down into the depth chart, that Ohio State has the talent there and we just don't, and they're going to wear out the black shirts. I'm worried. I was worried going into this prediction that this was going to be a lot more negative, especially right after the Purdue game. I mentioned that I don't know how well this is going to go. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is going to have to be pretty magical for me to be optimistic about this Ohio State game. But I'm still hopeful that we're going to find a win or 2 this season. I just don't know if it's going to be against Ohio State. I typically approach these with the team potential in mind, how well I think the team could play if they played to their potential. And even if we do play to our potential, Ohio State is the Alabama of the Big Ten. I've heard that comparison made, and it's very well founded. It is the Ohio State of the Big Ten. It didn't matter who the coach was. You had Urban Meyer go right into Ryan Day. Even before that, they were successful, winning 10 games a year. There's just no drop off there. They are a good recruiting bed. They have talent go there all the time. It's just, even if you play to your potential, there's a chance that you're just going to get out talented. That's just how it's going to be. They have talent. They have culture. Ryan Day is a great coach. And he's been in that system for a while. I mentioned that he didn't change the system when he took over. He might have tweaked some things here and there, but it's still the Ohio State offense, the Ohio State defense, which Ohio State is only known for their defense. They're known for their offense. So nothing's really changed. It's just kind of evolved. Aside from their Oregon loss, they are winning by an average of 34 points per game. That's very impressive. They've won 6 in a row against Nebraska. They are still shooting for that college football playoff spot. They're just outside at number 5. At some point, they're going to be in the Big Ten championship game, so they'll knock off, assuming that they win that, of course. Michigan State fans can still believe that they'll win that game, but I truly believe that Ohio State's just the best team in the Big Ten. So if we keep it close, I feel like that's going to be a minor victory for Nebraska. It's not going to be a moral victory. It'll be a minor victory because we had not put in the effort the last 2 games. If we can put in the effort to keep close with the top 5 team again, that'll show that we have fight in us. We just need to start working on a few things here and there to get over that hump. I just don't know if it's going to come this year at this point. If we win or even keep it close, I wouldn't be surprised given how Nebraska's played this year. They've been up and down. They've come close to knocking off top 5 teams. They've potentially been able to knock off 3 top 5 teams this year and just haven't done it. So, I mean, if they did, I wouldn't be surprised. I would be overjoyed and very happy, but I don't think I'd be surprised. I'd be like, where has this been all year? I like I said, I mentioned that I look at the team potential during all of these previews. And so that's why it's such a letdown every time we don't live up to that potential or even get close to that potential. Because in the recaps, we just haven't done that all year. We've had the Northwestern game as the closest one we've come to playing a perfect Nebraska game. And even then, there was some plays you'd like to have back and work on. But which team we're going to see on Saturday, we're just going to have to wait and see. So that's going to wrap up this week's preview. We will be back here on Sunday for a recap of the game. Do you think that there's any hope left for this Husker team to pull off an upset? I have a small inkling in the bottom of my heart that we will be able to do so, but I just can't convince my brain to let me make a prediction go that way. So leave a comment below or let me know on Twitter at Cobsmacked Pod. But until next time, go Big Red.